Hey everybody, I just thought I'd come out and do a video, just basically around, obviously everyone's talking about the caseworkers whistleblowing news article on our TV, and I just wanted to come out and talk about it because a lot of those that know me really well know that my advocacy journey was started due to a lot of underhanded things that happened. So that wasn't surprising at all. We all know that there's lots of gatekeepers out there, there's lots of systems and things that are put in to control money, to stop people spending so much. But I don't think it's just about money per se as either. I think there's also a control about money in itself. No, not money in itself, control in itself, sorry. Because there are times where I see it where the LA are wanting to actually go for a more expensive option, and the only option I can see is control. And this is one of the biggest problems. I know myself as a parent going through what we've been through with the accusations of fee, emotional abuse, anything they could throw at us when we were asking for support for the kids and we were applying for EHCPs was thrown at us. And because of that, and being neurodivergent, I found myself investigating the law, educating myself in how best to support my children, how best to support the family situation, looking into what my children need. And all that was used against me. So the more and more I made myself aware, the more and more that was used against me, and the more and more they worked to shut me down. I have 3 neurodivergent children. My eldest is 22 now, but we did have a situation when he was younger where social care was brought in. Crucially, it was when he started puberty and we'd had an escalation in his presentation. But I was actually, William was only 1 and I was pregnant with Harvey. So they brought social care in there, but not to help with the situation with the eldest. The reason they brought social care in there is because they were trying to state that we'd struggled to keep the younger 2 safe. Now, the younger 2 were never in any danger from my eldest. But yeah, and at the time I was still sat with my misdiagnosis of bipolar. Since then I've been re-diagnosed as autistic, and that my bipolar diagnosis wasn't actually correct. And my husband had an autism diagnosis. That was also used against us. And this is one of the biggest problems I have with the system, is they want you to work with them. They say they want you to be transparent. They say they're there to help you. They say they want to support you. Yet if you're honest that you're neurodivergent, if you're honest that you're autistic, you've got ADHD, you've got PDA, or any of them sort of profiles, it is used against you. I've been told that I've got a low IQ because of it. I have been told that I am unable to parent properly because of it, along with my husband being told the same. We have been told that our different brain makes us act and respond differently, which it does, but they were using it as a negative. When William was struggling to go into primary school, I was always very nurturing. I wouldn't, physically drag him into school, give him over to the teachers and walk away. That was not who I was. I would walk him in, I would be reassuring, I would get down to his level, I would talk to him. I would refuse to leave him distressed. And it got to the point where one time we'd gone into school and I was down at his level and I was just trying to talk to him and I was trying to reassure him and calm him down and re-regulate him. And I was told to get up off the floor. Get up. And so I stood up. And a teacher grabbed my child. And then another teacher pushed me and my husband through the doors out into the reception area of the school. these doors lock and you can't actually access without a pass. And they then proceeded to tell us that we had to leave the school. William was screaming his head off behind these doors and banging on the doors to get out. I sat down in the reception area and said I'm not leaving until I know he's calm and he's not distressed. And I got told that they would call the police on me for trespassing if I didn't leave. So I had no choice but to leave. My husband went back to later on and said he wanted to see him to make sure he didn't need, just to look through the door, and they refused. He even asked for his son back and they refused. They wouldn't give us him back. Then we had another situation where I took him to school on my own, and again he was dragged through them doors and the doors were locked and he was screaming, and I ran out of there crying. I was on my own and I felt intimidated. There was actually another parent sat in the reception area waiting for somebody who actually came out after me, and she said she couldn't believe how brutal and awful that was. And that all was used against me. That was stating that I was emotionally abusive, that I should have just let them get on with it, take my child off me and control the situation because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and that the reason my child was distressed was because I was trying to calm him down and regulate him, etc. And basically if they just dragged him away from me, he'd soon calm down and all would be fine. But on the outside he might appear to calm down, and they told me he calmed down, but I have my doubts about that, because they told me he calmed down when we sat in the reception area and we could still hear him in the corridor screaming the school down. I had random older children coming up to me telling me that my son cried all day in school, and when I asked school about it they told me it wasn't true and that all the children were lying. And when my son expressed distress to me and that he was struggling, again, they told me it wasn't true. It's the same with toileting. They told me that he was fully toilet trained and never had an accident in school, yet come home with practically a suitcase full of soiled and wet clothes every single day. Even when he was just going in for an hour, he ended up coming home with several wet clothes. And there were times he'd walk past the head teacher and Senko with big wet patches down his pants when he was coming out of school. But it was all me. They even had the Senko ringing up the paediatrician requesting that they removed his autism diagnosis because in the school's opinion he wasn't autistic. And that is where my biggest concerns comes in with the new things that are coming in, because at the end of the day there's more powers being given to school staff around these safeguarding issues, yet in the first place they couldn't manage them. Yet the problems that was going on, their level of expertise is not enough for a Senko to think they can to ask a paediatrician to remove a diagnosis that's been made is wrong. How can she sit there and say that she knows better than a group of panel members that have made a diagnosis decision along, and William's paperwork for his diagnosis started when he was 2. His diagnosis was made when he was 5. There was 3 years worth of evidence to prove that diagnosis was accurate. Yes, his presentation wasn't typical of autism, which we now know is because of his PDA profile, but it was there. There were also documents shared with local authority with sentences like must never be shared with parents on the top, which we did end up getting shared with us, basically accusing us of wanting to gain money. So apparently we was making up William's issues, fabricating induced illness was mentioned, because we wanted to get him financially by getting an EHCP, which I don't understand how we gain financially by getting an EHCP. It would actually be the schools that end up gaining financially. in the end, not us, not us directly, nothing to do with us. And things that they used against me there was because I bought my son's school shoes from Clark's. And I was also questioned over where I bought my son's coats from, which I bought from Next. And because I bought from them two shops, apparently that was proof that I was trying to gain more money and my only concern was about money. Now, that all comes from an early out worker coming to do their initial assessment paperwork. They questioned us about money. They asked us what benefits, etc. we were on, whether the kids got DLA, etc. They brought it all up, not us. The only conversation we ever had about money with any of these people was that one conversation. But that one early out worker had also written in paperwork that I had low IQ and that me and my husband were incapable of parenting due to our autism diagnosis because of how it made us think. Basically because you don't walk in and we're not a neurotypical household and we don't have extremely strict boundaries and routines like everybody expects us to do, which we can't do because of the PDA profile. That we are more nurturing. We talk to our children. We don't just demand and expect and control our children like is expected when you're going through social care, etc. That was all used against us. The fact that I had made myself aware of the best ways to support my children, the best ways to gain the right support in education for my children, and I was aware of the law was all used against me. The fact that we'd bought our own house at the time, and we'd moved from a council house into our first house, that was also used against us, and that was apparently another reason why we was looking at money. Apparently being proud that we'd actually managed to achieve buying our own house in the first place when we was doing the transition from nursery to school was also, again, noted down as a negative. Anything that me and my husband achieved was noted down as a negative because that was apparently more proof that we was abusing our children to gain stuff, which, yeah. When we were only pushing for an EHCP and nothing else, I do not know and understand how that plays into it. We have also been the fact that we've had to access independent professionals and reports has been used against us. So we had independent assessment of ADHD for Harvey, which was then, he was then on a private prescription, which was then transferred to shared care for his ADHD medication, and we was reported to social care, and the words that the Senko of that school used was that the parents are buying unsolicited drugs off the internet and giving them to their child. Obviously we could prove that straight off, and he was going back, actually, that social worker actually went back and had a go with the Senko because of the serious nature of what she accused us of, which wasn't true. And she'd also made it really, really aware that the advocate that we'd taken in to a meeting, her and this advocate had a really bad set to within the meeting and made everything 50 times worse than it needed to be. But she also made us aware in a phone call that was the reason she was making the phone call, the referral. And because we wouldn't agree to a section 17, she did a section 47. Which is basically stating that my children was in danger just because she disagreed with the way my advocate had conducted herself within the meeting, and she was massively not happy with that, and the only thing she could think of fabricating was the fact that we were giving him unsolicited drugs. The social worker met my child, met Harvey. I was totally happy with Harvey. But these are, and the reason I'm talking about this is because we've seen throughout what do they call it now? Sorry, I'm thinking of the words. That news article has basically told you they are gatekeeping, they are doing everything they possibly can, they are purposely not putting things down in email, they are purposely denying education to children and the right supports. But I wanted to talk about how far they'll go to do that. How far they're willing to push, what depths that they're willing to go to do it. It's not just a case of we're not going to put it in writing or we're going to push you to tribunal. There are very, very serious cases out there that they are putting people under, like us, to deny that process. You know, this all started for us because we asked for an EHCP for William, and then we asked for an EHCP for Harvey. Prior to asking for the EHCPs for both of them boys, we were not on anyone's radar. All we did was ask for the proper support within school, and that is what set it all off. With Joshua, when he was younger, the reason it was set off then is, again, we was in an EHCP annual review meeting. We were talking about how his behaviours had increased due to puberty, and I was in the annual review. I was 2 days overdue, very heavily pregnant. I'd done quite a journey because his school wasn't actually local to us at that time. To get there, I had been very poorly with Harvey's pregnancy as well, so I'd become quite upset in the meeting, so they decided to do the referral for that reason, apparently. And I get they were trying to help me. It's just the wrong way to go about it in that aspect. But when it comes to William and Harvey's, it was definitely a case of us asking for an EHC needs assessment. And it's interesting because when we'd transferred Harvey's school and Harvey had basically completely crashed out straight away, and we was going through the process, I remember the Senko ringing me up and saying, I am here to do what's best for Harvey. I am not going to do what you want me to do just because you tell me to do it. And I'd always wondered why she said that to me, but when I think back, she'd had a conversation with his previous school and Senko. She'd actually stated that in an email as well, and that's why she'd come up with that attitude. They must have said basically we tell them what to do. We don't. We tell them what the law is and what their duty is. We were telling them what William needed and what was going on. We were proving that it was being hidden by the school, but unfortunately the school were being supported by the local authority to close it all down. And unbeknown to us, they were cancelling meetings when reality was they weren't cancelling meetings, they were just uninviting us and having meetings without us. You know, and the only time they should be doing that is if there's an immediate safeguarding risk to a child, and there was never ever, and they even said there was never ever an immediate safeguarding risk to our children. And the funniest thing is as soon as I deregistered my children from school, it stopped. As soon as I deregistered my children from school, on that deregistration form, the school's ticked, there is no significant or safeguarding risk at all to these children. So as soon as I stopped it being their problem, everything stopped. Because they thought, oh, home education, she's going away. Unbeknown to them, I didn't go away. I home educated, but I still carried on fighting for the right placements, and I just took the school out of the equation, and then the LA tried to carry it on. Unfortunately for us, the first refusal to assess was upheld in tribunal because the judge was looking more at all of the safeguarding stuff that the school had done rather than my child's needs. I then got an independent EP report and put another EHC needs assessment in, and in an email the caseworker had actually turned around and said to a manager, why are we doing another needs looking at this again? The tribunal have already agreed with us, we don't need to do it. And the manager had actually told her, do your job, you do have to do it, we now have more evidence proving that this child needs an EHCP. And she was really, really angry that we had gained that evidence, but there were never any evidence from school, you see. The only evidence that the local authority had was a pen profile from the school's EP, where they're talking about a child with no identifying details on what they were dealing with. So they had no idea that who my son was, what his actual needs were. They'd never met him. All they had was a bit of information the school had shared with him, and basically what this EP was saying and the school had fed to them was the child just needs to get into school and get on with it. And that was not the case. William was an absolute mess, if I'm honest. There were even times where he'd come out of school where he'd been left soiled and wet, and he was that sore he was struggling to walk. If I'd sent him in school for that, that would have been an immediate safeguarding risk. I'd have never done it. Never done it. But this is why I do what I do, and this is why I decided to use my evidence to support people, because of how bad it goes. I don't do the social care side of stuff per se, but I do the education side of stuff and the support that I can do. When it comes to EHCPs, meetings, tribunals, fighting it, that's what I've done for my children, and I'm using what I've done for my children, and now my many years of experience in a professional capacity to support all you lot. I do fear the changes that are coming in are... I don't fear, actually. When you read the changes that are coming in, it is basically agreeing and making these antics lawful, and that's what we need to stop, and that's what needs to be understood. Yes, we have a whistleblower that's come out and has admitted all of this, but if you look at what they're bringing forward in legislation from the government, they're legalising all of this behaviour. They're allowing the local authorities to get on with doing what they do, which is denying children support and pushing into the wrong places, blaming parents for sending children's difficulties. That is what needs to stop. They say it's a transparent system. They say they're here to help us. They say they're here to do what's best for the child, but they're not. They're not. This is all about control and money. This has absolutely nothing to do with the well-being of our children. And what they're actually going to do is create a more dependent generation of children that are going to need so much support because they have failed them. And that's what we need to stop.